So, who the hell are you? The question hit me 3 hours after I climbed into the wrong van. Somewhere on a winding mountain road where my phone had exactly 1 bar of service, and turning around was apparently no longer an option. My name is Ethan Parker, and until that moment, I had believed I was headed to my college friend Noah's bachelor weekend in the Blue Ridge Mountains. In my defense, there had been 2 black passenger vans outside the hotel that morning, both surrounded by guys carrying duffel bags, coolers, and enough snacks to survive a minor apocalypse. I had been half awake, balancing coffee in one hand and answering Noah's text with the other, so when somebody shouted, "Bachelor crew, let's move," I climbed aboard without thinking. Nobody questioned me. One guy handed me a breakfast sandwich. Another introduced himself as Mason and immediately fell asleep. I figured Noah had invited coworkers I hadn't met. Apparently, everyone else figured I was somebody else's friend. The misunderstanding might have lasted all weekend if the groom hadn't finally twisted around from the front seat, studied me with growing confusion, and asked the question that made every conversation stop. "I'm Ethan," I said. Silence. "Ethan who?" "Parker." More silence. The groom blinked. "Do I know you?" My stomach dropped. "You're Noah, right?" Someone behind me made a choking sound that quickly became laughter. The groom shook his head. "I'm Tyler." I pulled out my phone so fast I nearly dropped it. 12 unread messages waited beneath Noah's name. "Dude, where are you?" "The van is leaving." "Ethan?" "Wrong van." "Call me." I stared at the screen, then at 8 complete strangers staring back at me. "Oh my God," I whispered. I joined the wrong bachelor trip. The van erupted. Everyone laughed except the man sitting across the aisle from me. I had noticed him earlier because he seemed strangely untouched by the chaos around him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair, blue-gray eyes, and the calm presence of someone who never needed to raise his voice to be heard. Ryan Callahan, Tyler's best man. An alpha. I knew that last part without anyone telling me. As an omega, I had spent years learning how to ignore instinctive first impressions, but something about Ryan's quiet presence made that difficult. Not frightening, just impossible to overlook. "Pull over," I told the driver. Mason laughed. "Out here? You'll make friends with the squirrels." I looked through the window. Pine-covered mountains stretched for miles beneath a darkening sky. Ryan checked his phone. "We're about 140 miles from the hotel." "Great," I muttered. "I'll simply disappear from embarrassment." That earned another round of laughter. Ryan didn't join them. His gaze moved toward the clouds gathering over the ridgeline. "Storm's coming." Tyler checked the weather and groaned. "Road back might close before dark." I stared at my useless phone, then at the unfamiliar mountains, and finally at Ryan. He leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. "Looks like you're coming with us, Ethan Parker." And for reasons I couldn't explain yet, hearing my name in his voice made getting into the wrong then suddenly feel like the beginning of something rather than the end of my weekend. By the time the van turned onto a narrow road winding between tall pines, I had accepted 3 facts. Noah was never going to let me forget this. Tyler's friends considered my mistake the funniest thing that had happened all year, and Ryan Callahan had somehow become the only person in the van who made me feel less ridiculous. Rain began tapping against the windows as we climbed higher into the mountains. My phone finally found enough service for Noah's messages to arrive. His group had already reached their rental house nearly 200 miles away, and with the storm moving in, there was no realistic way for either group to come get me tonight. I apologized approximately 12 times. Noah responded that I owed him the full story tomorrow. "Bad news?" Ryan asked quietly. "Depends on your definition of bad." "Apparently, I live here now." The corner of his mouth lifted. It was the first time I had seen him smile. "Could be worse. I am trapped in the mountains with 8 strangers. 7 strangers, Mason called from the front. We shared a breakfast sandwich. That makes us family. Everyone laughed, including me this time. 20 minutes later, the trees opened around a large cedar cabin overlooking a misty valley. It should have felt peaceful, but thunder rolled somewhere beyond the ridge as we hurried our bags inside. The cabin smelled like pine wood and fresh coffee, and for about 30 seconds I believed the situation might actually work out. Then Tyler counted the bedrooms. "We have a problem." I closed my eyes. Of course we do. The rental had been booked for 8 people. I was number 9. Mason immediately suggested I sleep on the floor beside the fireplace, which Tyler rejected because he apparently possessed slightly better hospitality standards than his friends. Before anyone could start debating couches, Ryan picked up his duffel bag. "He can take my room." I looked at him. "Absolutely not. It is fine. You paid for this trip. I accidentally invaded it." Invaded feels dramatic. "I climbed into your vehicle and traveled 140 miles before realizing I did not know the groom." Ryan considered that. Fair point. Tyler checked the remaining rooms and discovered another complication. One bedroom had 2 twin beds. Ryan had been sharing it with Mason, who immediately volunteered to move into another room with 2 friends. His enthusiasm was suspicious enough that I narrowed my eyes at him. "Do not make this weird." Mason raised both hands innocently. I did not say anything. 5 minutes later, I stood inside a small upstairs bedroom with 2 beds separated by a nightstand and rain streaking the window. Ryan placed his bag beside the bed closest to the door. "You can take the window. You really do not mind?" "Ethan, if this is the worst thing that happens this weekend, Tyler has organized a remarkably successful bachelor trip." I laughed despite myself. Then lightning flashed beyond the mountains, briefly illuminating his face. The room became quiet again. Ryan looked toward me, and something in his expression softened. "Relax. You are safe here." I believed him immediately, which was strange because I had known him for less than 4 hours. Later, after everyone settled downstairs, I returned to the room and climbed into bed. The storm had grown louder, but that was not what kept me awake. Across the dark room, Ryan shifted beneath his blanket. "Still awake?" he asked. "Unfortunately." A pause followed. "Me too." Neither of us said anything else, but somehow the silence no longer felt uncomfortable. Morning arrived with the smell of coffee, maple syrup, and somebody downstairs arguing about whether pancakes counted as an acceptable recovery breakfast. I opened my eyes to find Ryan's bed already empty and neatly made, which somehow seemed exactly like him. When I walked downstairs, Tyler pointed at me with a spatula. "The accidental guest lives." Mason slid a mug across the counter. "Coffee. You are officially one of us now." "That feels legally questionable," I said, earning enough laughter to make the embarrassment easier to carry. Ryan stood beside the stove cutting fruit, quiet as usual. He glanced at me and pushed a plate toward the empty seat beside him. "Eat before they start the games." I should have asked what games meant. An hour later, I was standing on the back deck wearing an oversized cowboy hat while Tyler's friends tried to answer ridiculous questions about the groom. Every wrong answer came with some harmless punishment invented by Mason, usually involving bad singing or an embarrassing story. Because I knew absolutely nothing about Tyler, I became the easiest target. "What was Tyler's first job?" Mason asked. "Astronaut," I answered. Tyler nearly dropped his coffee laughing. "Incorrect." "I am shocked. Your punishment is karaoke tonight." "I am leaving." "Road is still wet," Ryan said from behind me. "You are trapped." I turned. "You are enjoying this." His expression remained perfectly calm. A little. That surprised a laugh out of me. The strange thing was that Ryan rarely participated in the chaos himself. He watched from the edge of the group, smiling occasionally, helping whenever something needed carrying or fixing, but avoiding every joke about dating. When Mason called him the permanent bachelor, Ryan only shook his head and changed the subject. By afternoon, the clouds had lifted enough for everyone to gather around a fire pit overlooking the valley. I was beginning to understand why Tyler trusted Ryan. He noticed things. When someone needed another chair, Ryan brought it before they asked. When Tyler started worrying about the weather forecast, Ryan quietly checked the roads. When I mentioned that strong coffee made me jittery, a fresh mug appeared beside me 10 minutes later, noticeably weaker than the first. Nobody else seemed to notice these small gestures. I did. Later, while everyone prepared dinner, I reached for a stack of plates at the same moment as another alpha named Derek. He was friendly, energetic, and apparently incapable of understanding personal space. "So, Ethan," he said, leaning closer, "since you are stuck with us, tell me something interesting." I stepped back slightly. "I once joined the wrong bachelor trip." "Already heard that one." He moved closer again, still smiling. Before I could answer, Ryan appeared beside us. He did not touch Derek or raise his voice. He simply handed him a tray. "Tyler needs these outside." Derek looked at Ryan, then at the tray. "Right? Sure." He left immediately. I stared after him. Was that an alpha thing? Ryan raised an eyebrow. That was a best man thing. I am supposed to keep everyone from being annoying. You might need overtime. His laugh was quiet, almost private. For a second, the noisy kitchen seemed to fade around us. Then Tyler called Ryan from outside. Ryan started toward the door before looking back at me. We are hiking tomorrow if the trail is clear. You coming? I should have said no. Instead, I smiled. Apparently, I am one of you now. Ryan held my gaze for 1 second longer than necessary. Not exactly, he said softly, and walked away before I could ask what he meant. The trail looked harmless when we left the cabin the next morning, a wide path curling through wet pine trees beneath a pale blue sky. And for the first mile, I wondered why Tyler had made everyone carry rain jackets. Then the mountains reminded us who was in charge. Clouds rolled over the ridge so quickly that sunlight disappeared within minutes, and a cold drizzle began falling through the branches. Mason complained dramatically. Tyler told him to walk faster. Ryan checked the trail map and suggested turning back before the weather worsened. We were less than 2 miles from the cabin when I stopped to retie my boot. Keep going, I called. I will catch up. Ryan stayed. I can tie a shoe by myself. I have complete faith in you. Then why are you standing there? Because Tyler would never forgive me if our accidental guest disappeared into the mountains. By the time I stood, the others had vanished around a bend. We followed, but 10 minutes later the trail divided around a fallen tree, and neither path looked familiar. Ryan studied the map on his phone. No signal. Please tell me you know where we are. I know exactly where we are. I relaxed. Really? We are lost. I stared at him. Ryan smiled. You walked directly into that one. Rain began falling harder, and we found an old trail shelter about a 1/4 mile farther down the slope. It was little more than a wooden roof, 3 walls, and a bench, but it kept us dry. Ryan stepped onto the slick wooden floor and twisted his ankle slightly. He caught himself against the wall before I could reach him. Are you okay? I am fine. That is what people say immediately before admitting they are not fine. He sat while I checked his ankle. Nothing seemed seriously wrong, but I insisted he rest. You are surprisingly bossy, he said. I prefer responsible. For several minutes, we listened to rain drumming against the roof. Without Tyler and the others around, Ryan seemed different. Less guarded. Can I ask you something? I said. You are going to anyway. Why does everyone call you the permanent bachelor? His smile disappeared, but not angrily. I was engaged once. I immediately regretted asking. You do not have to explain. It ended 2 years ago. He loved the version of me everyone else saw. Reliable alpha. Good career. Good family. Always knows what to do. Ryan looked toward the gray forest. Eventually, I realized neither of us knew who I was when I was not being useful. His honesty caught me completely off guard. My ex had a different version of that, I admitted. He liked me better when I agreed with him. Eventually I started wondering whether being easy to love meant becoming easier to ignore. Ryan turned toward me. You should never have had to make yourself smaller for somebody. The words were simple, but something inside me tightened. Neither should you. For a long moment, neither of us looked away. The rain softened around us until individual drops became audible against the leaves. Ryan's expression changed, the careful distance he usually kept slipping for just a second. He leaned slightly closer, then stopped himself. We should find the others, he said quietly. Probably. Neither of us moved. Then a distant voice called my name through the trees. Ryan stood carefully, testing his ankle. I offered him my arm. He looked at it, then at me, and accepted. As we started toward Tyler's voice, I understood something that made the walk back feel completely different. I was no longer wondering why Ryan kept looking at me. I was beginning to wonder what would happen if one day he stopped looking away. By the time Ryan and I reached the cabin, Tyler had already turned our brief disappearance into the greatest crisis of his bachelor weekend. He stood on the porch with Mason beside him, both staring down the trail until they saw us emerge from the trees. There they are, Mason shouted. And they are holding hands. I immediately released Ryan's arm. I was helping him walk. Ryan glanced at me. You dropped me quickly. Your ankle has experienced a miraculous recovery. Tyler laughed and pulled open the door. Inside, the cabin felt warmer than before, filled with the smell of chili simmering in the kitchen and damp jackets drying near the fireplace. I told myself nothing had changed. Then Ryan sat across from me during dinner, and every time I looked up, I found him already watching me. That evening, Mason announced a game of truth or dare. I should have gone upstairs. Instead, I stayed because leaving would have looked suspicious, and apparently I cared what 8 men I had met yesterday thought about my behavior. The questions started harmlessly. Tyler admitted he had cried during 3 different animated movies. Derek confessed that he still called his mother whenever he had to cook anything more complicated than eggs. Then Mason turned toward me. Ethan, truth or dare? Truth. I have seen what you consider a dare. He grinned. Who in this room would you most want to go on a date with? Everyone immediately started making noise. My face warmed. That is not a reasonable question. It is extremely reasonable. I barely know any of you. That was not the question. I tried to laugh it away, but my eyes betrayed me. They moved toward Ryan for less than a second. Mason noticed. So did Tyler. More importantly, Ryan noticed. I stood. I suddenly need fresh air. The porch was cold and quiet. The storm clouds finally gone. Stars covered the sky above the dark mountains. I rested my hands on the railing and tried to convince myself that embarrassment was the only reason my heart was beating too quickly. The door opened behind me. I did not need to turn around. You did not have to follow me, I said. I know. Ryan stopped beside me. Then why did you? He was quiet long enough that I finally looked at him. The playful distance from earlier was gone. Because I wanted to. My breath caught. Ryan, what happened on the trail? Was not nothing. I did not say it was. His eyes held mine. Then what are you afraid of? I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Maybe waking up Monday and discovering I was just the funny stranger who wandered into your weekend. Ryan's expression tightened. You think that is how I see you? I do not know how you see me. He stepped closer, leaving enough space for me to move away. I did not. Why do you keep looking at me like that? I asked. His voice lowered. Because I am trying very hard not to do something selfish. What? For once, Ryan Callahan looked uncertain. Kiss you. The answer was so simple that all my rehearsed defenses disappeared. You could ask. His eyes searched mine. May I? I nodded. Ryan leaned closer and kissed me gently, brief enough that I could have called it a question rather than an answer. When he pulled back, neither of us spoke. Then I smiled. He smiled too. For one impossible minute, everything felt easy. Later, walking toward the kitchen alone, I heard Mason laughing in the next room. You owe me $50, he said. I told you Ryan would fall for him. I stopped before reaching the doorway, and suddenly that kiss felt very different. I stood outside the kitchen doorway with my hand still resting on the wall, listening to laughter that suddenly sounded completely different. $50? Another voice said. You seriously bet on Callahan? Mason laughed again. I told you. All it needed was the right person. My stomach tightened. A few minutes earlier, Ryan's kiss had felt careful and honest, like something neither of us had planned. Now every glance across the dinner table, every quiet conversation, every conveniently timed moment alone rearranged itself inside my head. I walked upstairs before anyone noticed me. My bag sat beside the window exactly where I had left it. I began packing. I was folding my sweatshirt when Ryan entered the room. He stopped immediately. What are you doing? Packing. I can see that. His voice softened. Why? I kept my attention on the bag. How much did you know? About what? The bet. Silence followed. That was enough to make me look at him. Confusion crossed his face. What bet? Do not do that. Ethan, I genuinely do not know what you mean. I heard Mason downstairs. $50. He told someone you would fall for me. Ryan exhaled slowly. I did not know anything about that. Maybe you did not place the bet. That does not make this feel better. This. All of it. I gestured between us. The jokes. The room. The hike. Everyone watching us tonight like they were waiting for something to happen. Ryan took one step closer, then stopped when I moved back. He noticed. The hurt in his expression made this harder, not easier. Nobody arranged the room, he said. Nobody arranged the storm. And nobody told me to kiss you. Then why was everyone expecting it? I do not know. Exactly. My voice came out quieter than I intended. I have spent too much of my life wondering whether somebody actually wanted me or just wanted the version of me that made their life easier. I cannot do that again. Ryan's face changed at the reminder of what I had told him. In the trail shelter. You think I would use that against you? I think I met you 2 days ago. That landed between us with painful honesty. Ryan nodded once. That is fair. I had expected him to argue. Somehow his calmness made my eyes sting. The kiss was real, he said. For me, it was real before it happened. I closed my bag. I need to go home. Tonight. The road reopened. I checked. There is a shuttle stop about 12 miles from here. A driver can pick me up in the morning. Ryan looked toward the rain-dark window. Let me drive you. No. Ethan. Please. He became still. Then he nodded. All right. That single answer almost broke my resolve. I barely slept. Before sunrise, I carried my bag downstairs and found the cabin silent. My rideshare was waiting at the end of the gravel driveway. I left without waking anyone. As the cabin disappeared behind the trees, I told myself leaving early was the sensible choice. Back at the cabin, Ryan came downstairs less than 20 minutes later and found my empty coffee mug beside a note that said only, "Thank you for letting me stay." Mason walked into the kitchen yawning. Ryan turned toward him. What was the $50 bet? Mason froze. You heard about that? Ryan's expression went cold. Ethan did. The sleep vanished from Mason's face. Wait. He thinks we bet that you could get him to like you. Ryan stared at him. Mason's eyes widened. Oh no. Ryan, that is not what the bet was at all. Ryan stared at Mason across the quiet kitchen while dawn slowly turned the windows gray. Then tell me what it was. Mason rubbed both hands over his face. Yesterday, after you stayed behind with Ethan on the trail, Tyler said you were acting different. I said you liked him. Derek said you would never admit it because you have avoided dating for 2 years. So I bet $50 that before the weekend ended, you would finally stop pretending you were not interested in anyone. Ryan looked toward the front door as if he could somehow see 12 miles down the mountain road. You made Ethan think he was entertainment. That was never the point. It does not matter what you meant. It matters what he heard. Tyler entered the kitchen, still half asleep, and froze when he understood what had happened. Within minutes, everyone was awake. Ryan ignored the apologies and reached for his keys. Where are you going? Tyler asked. To find him. Mason checked his phone. His driver probably took Route 21. The shuttle stop is near Pine Hollow. Ryan was almost through the door when Tyler called after him. There is something else. Ryan turned. Tyler held up his phone. Noah messaged me last night. Apparently, he found out how Ethan ended up with us. The hotel had hosted 2 bachelor groups that morning, both scheduled to leave within 10 minutes of each other. Both transportation companies had sent nearly identical black vans. One driver had even parked in the wrong loading zone. Ethan had not ignored a sign or missed some obvious clue. He had simply followed the wrong group at exactly the wrong moment. Or maybe, Ryan thought as he drove down the mountain, it had been the right moment disguised as a mistake. Meanwhile, I sat beneath the wooden awning of a tiny shuttle station beside a gas station and convenience store, watching morning fog drift across the highway. My rideshare driver had dropped me there 20 minutes earlier. The next shuttle toward Asheville would arrive at 8:30. From there, I could rent a car, get back to Noah, apologize properly, and pretend the last 2 days had been an absurd story instead of something that hurt. My phone buzzed. Mason, then Tyler, then Derek. I ignored all 3. A message from Ryan appeared next. Please do not leave before I can explain. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Another message arrived. The bet was not about you. I almost replied, but stopped myself. The problem was not only the bet. It was how quickly I had wanted to believe Ryan was different. How easily 2 days beside him had made me forget every careful rule I had built after my last relationship. I heard a vehicle pull into the parking lot and assumed it was another traveler until a familiar dark blue sport utility vehicle stopped near the curb. Ryan stepped out. He had changed into jeans and a gray jacket, but his hair was still slightly messy, as if he had left the cabin immediately after waking. He saw me beneath the awning and stopped. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then he approached slowly. You drove 12 miles to explain a $50 bet. I asked. No. He stopped several feet away, deliberately giving me space. I drove 12 miles because you left believing something about me that is not true. I looked toward the highway. Mason already texted. Then you know they were betting on whether I would admit I liked someone again. That does not make it mature. No, it makes my friends idiots. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Ryan noticed, but did not push. There was no plan, Ethan. Nobody put you in that van. Nobody arranged for us to share a room. Nobody sent us down the wrong trail. He paused. Every ridiculous part of how we met was an accident. I finally looked at him. And the rest. Ryan held my gaze. That is what I came here to talk about. Ryan stood beneath the wooden awning with the morning fog behind him, waiting without trying to fill the silence. That was one of the things I had noticed about him from the beginning. He never seemed afraid of quiet. "What exactly did you come here to say?" I asked. His eyes stayed on mine. Getting into that van was an accident. Meeting me was an accident. The storm, the room, getting separated on the trail, all of it happened because neither of us planned any of this. I folded my arms. That is not exactly a convincing romantic speech. A small smile touched his face. "I am not finished." He stepped closer, then stopped with several feet still between us. "Choosing you is not an accident." The words settled somewhere deeper than I wanted them to. I looked away toward the highway, where the pavement disappeared into morning mist. "Ryan, we have known each other for 2 days. I know. You do not know whether this works outside a cabin in the mountains. I know that too. Then what are you asking me for?" "1 date." I turned back toward him. Of all the dramatic answers I had expected, that was not one of them. 1 date. A real one. No bachelor party. No shared room because somebody counted the beds wrong. No mountain. Storm. No Mason making terrible decisions with $50. I laughed before I could stop myself. Ryan's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Dinner," he continued. "Somewhere public. Somewhere boring. If that makes you more comfortable. You can leave whenever you want. Then, if you decide I am not nearly as interesting without a weather emergency, I will accept that. You practiced this in the car. Only the first half. I could tell." He smiled, and suddenly I remembered why leaving had been so difficult. It was not because Ryan was an alpha or because some instinct told me we belonged together. It was because he listened, because he noticed when my coffee was too strong, because he had stayed behind when I stopped on the trail, because when I asked for space, he gave it to me even when doing so clearly hurt. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The shuttle company had sent an update. 8 minutes until arrival. Ryan glanced toward the road, but said nothing. "What happens after the date?" I asked. "I do not know." His answer came immediately. "That is kind of the point. You are terrible at selling this. I work in commercial real estate, Ethan. I could give you a 20-minute presentation if that would help. Please do not. Then I am out of material." I laughed again, and this time the tension inside me finally loosened. "You have not actually asked me yet." Ryan blinked. "Asked you what?" "For the date." Understanding crossed his face. He straightened with exaggerated seriousness. "Ethan Parker, would you go on a first date with me?" I let him wait for 3 seconds because after everything that weekend, he deserved at least a little uncertainty. "Yes." The relief on his face was almost comical. "Yes." "Do not make me reconsider." Ryan stepped closer. "May I kiss you?" That mattered more than he probably understood. I nodded. The kiss was gentle and brief, carrying none of the confusion from the night before. When we separated, a white shuttle appeared around the curve. Ryan looked at it, then at me. "I suppose that is your ride." I picked up my bag. "It is." His disappointment was immediate. I smiled. "You said 1 date, Ryan. You did not say I had to abandon Noah's bachelor weekend to get it." He laughed and reached for my bag, then stopped. "May I?" I handed it to him. Together we walked toward the arriving shuttle, and for the first time since I had climbed into the wrong van, I knew exactly where I was going. 1 year later, I stood outside another mountain lodge staring suspiciously at a black passenger van while Mason leaned out the open door and shouted, "Ethan, check the passenger list before you get in." The entire group laughed. I lifted my coffee toward him. I have spent 12 months preparing for this moment. Tyler appeared behind Mason, now wearing a wedding ring and the satisfied expression of a man who had been waiting all year to make the same joke. Name the groom. Ryan Callahan. Location. Blue Ridge Mountains. Purpose of trip? Celebrating Ryan before he gets married. Tyler nodded solemnly. He can board. I climbed inside and found the same familiar faces that had once been complete strangers. Mason had brought breakfast sandwiches again. Derek had brought enough snacks for twice the number of people attending. Someone had already created a playlist nobody agreed on. A year ago, I had sat among them wondering how I could possibly survive one weekend. Now Mason moved his bag so I could take my usual seat. The strangest part was how ordinary everything felt. Ryan and I had gone on that first date the week after the mountain trip. He chose a small Italian restaurant in Asheville with terrible parking and excellent pasta. There was no storm, no accidental room assignment, and no audience waiting for something dramatic to happen. We talked for 3 hours. Then there was a second date. Then a 10th. Somewhere between Sunday morning coffee, grocery store arguments about cereal, long drives, family dinners, and quiet evenings when neither of us needed to say much. Ryan stopped being the alpha I had accidentally met and became the person I deliberately chose. He never asked me to become smaller. I never asked him to be useful every second of every day. We learned each other slowly, which turned out to be far better than believing love had to arrive fully formed. The van door opened again, and Ryan climbed aboard wearing jeans, hiking boots, and the gray jacket I remembered from the shuttle station. His blue-gray eyes found mine immediately. "You are in the correct van?" "I passed an inspection." "Good." I was worried. He sat beside me and looked down at my left hand. A simple silver engagement ring caught the morning light. 6 months earlier, Ryan had proposed in my apartment kitchen while we were making pancakes. No restaurant, no crowd, no dramatic speech. He had simply taken my hand and said he wanted ordinary mornings with me for the rest of his life. I had said yes before he finished asking. Mason turned around from the front seat. For the record, my $50 bet was technically correct. Ryan sighed. "We are not discussing that today. I predicted true love. You created a misunderstanding that almost ruined everything. History remembers visionaries poorly." Tyler laughed. The van started moving, carrying us toward the same mountains where Ryan and I had first learned how much two strangers could understand about each other when the rest of the world became quiet. I watched the city disappear behind us. Ryan reached for my hand. "Any regrets?" he asked. I pretended to consider the question. "One." His eyebrows lifted. "I should have stolen Mason's breakfast sandwich that first morning." From the front seat, Mason protested loudly. Ryan laughed, warm and unguarded, and squeezed my hand. Outside, sunlight spread across the mountains, turning the distant ridges gold. A year earlier, I had thought getting lost meant I had made a mistake. Now I understood that sometimes a wrong turn does not decide where you belong. It only introduces you to someone worth choosing when you finally know exactly where you are going.